Throughout the world, there has been a numerous amount of battles occurring in different places for different reasons. All of them have been extreme or brutal in some manner, but none like the battle held in World War One. This war caused many fatalities. Homes were lost, women were taken, men died, countries destroyed. It was a tragic war. A specific location that was a major aspect in this war was the Western Front. It began in 1914. The Allied forces of Belgium, Britain, France, Portugal, USA, and those in the British Empire, consisting of Australia, India, South Africa, Canada, and New Zealand, began their attack on Germany as the German army crossed the Belgian border on the 3rd of August in 1914, beginning World War One. Major offences had occurred from 1915 to 1917. Severe injuries and deaths to both sides of each war in this time were caused in the war through the use of machine guns, artillery, and barbed wire.
The Battle of Marne was a war which started on the 6th to the 12th in September of 1914 and had stopped Germany from gaining a lot of territory in Paris, France. The war was a big part of the Western Front. Germany had gained some territory, and since they weren't gaining more, they wanted to defend the area of land that they had, and therefore they decided to start digging trenches. This had helped the Germans to defeat more of the British and French, and since the British and French were losing more of their men, they decided to make their own trenches. Neither side were able to gain much land in what became known as the Western Front. As this battle progressed in the Western Front, more wars started taking place in this area over the years. Some wars in the Western Front include the 1914 battles of Marne and battles of Ypres. In 1916, the major battles was the battles of Verdun and the battles of Somme. In 1917, the major battles were Passchendaele, Battle of Cambrai, and Battle of Polygon. The Battle of Polygon, 26th to 27th of September 1917, in Belgium, Pires, was a battle between the Anzacs, the Turks, and the Germans. This was the third attack in Pires, which brought the Allies together, which included Britain, Australian, and New Zealand soldiers. The conditions of the war field was a mixture of dry and wet land, depending on the weather. When the land was dry, the land was able to aid the Australian and British forces, but when it was wet, the Germans had the advantage. This is because the Germans had the suitable land to fight on, like concrete or platforms, whereas Anzacs had to fight in trenches that could be easily flooded. In 1916, the Battle of Verdun and the Battle of Somme were very big events during World War One, due to the fact that there were many injuries and deaths. Because of the fact that no progress was made from any sides to gain more land against each other, new military technology was made. This introduced different weapons, such as tanks and jets.
The idea behind the Anzac legend was that the Australian and New Zealand troops helped to build a reputation that shows what people can do through multiple qualities that help shape a country and its people. Like the strength and bravery that many men endured during World War One, the Anzac legend was made on the 25th of April, which people would say was the worst day for Australians, as there was no victory achieved. But due to many loss of lives, Australians displayed characteristics of great courage, endurance, initiative, discipline, and mateship, which today can be seen as the Anzac spirit or the Anzac legend. The Anzac legend has become such a great significance in the history of Australia that it has become one of the reasons why we have Anzac Day. If Australia never took part in the war, the eyes of the rest of the world wouldn't have seen how strong Australia could be as one nation and earn the respect of other nations that Australia has today.
The Anzac legend was born on the 25th of the 4th, 1915, thus explaining why we celebrate on this day every year, as it marks the day the Anzac legend was born. Although the Anzacs were not successful, the Anzacs still displayed courage, endurance, initiative, discipline, and mateship. The legend is that the Australian and New Zealand troops helped to establish their country's reputations in the world through qualities of strength and bravery when faced with adversity. The Anzac legend is also important because it encourages Australians to remember the soldiers who sacrificed their lives for this country. The legend has made such an impression on Australians that we continue to commemorate the landing of the Anzac soldiers on the shores of Gallipoli on the 25th of April each year.
The spirit of the Anzac is an intangible thing. It is unseen, unpredictable, and an unquenchable thirst for justice, freedom, and peace. It underpins our unique Australian image, way of life, and it is an integral part of our heritage. There are also many different media that represent the Anzac legend in association with the Australian and New Zealand men who fought on the Western Front. The song Waltzing Matilda is written as a poem from a former Australian soldier who remembers parts of his time fighting in Gallipoli before he was woken in a hospital bed. The Gallipoli film is based on a soldier whose family doesn't want him to go to the war. He eventually enters and sees the horrors of war, where he is eventually killed. Simpson was a stretcher bearer who rescued many Australian lives alongside his donkey. Memorials are visited to pay respect to the soldiers who fought for our country. Websites such as the Queensland Anzac Day Committee helped to provide educational and historical things which had occurred in the First World War. This website is being used to teach others what it is like for the Anzac soldiers. The museums, such as the Australian War Memorials Gallipoli Gallery, contain ancient artefacts, such as weapons and clothes, which were used by the Australian soldiers in World War I.
The Western Front was a key battleground in a global war, which, like a child encountering his first fight, broke the innocence of our global community.